Okay, YouTubers, this is Joe from ArtAlienTV, another quick game of interplanetary I Spy going on here, and today we're looking at this image, and it's from Sol 2751 mass camera. Unfortunately, it's only in black and white, and what we're looking at today is this thing here. It's another skull, and it's another strange one. But this is Mars, after all, and bear in mind that many others have been found by myself in this area recently. I'll show you a couple of those in a minute to compare, but I'm also going to show you some more details on this, which I published a few days ago, because basically what I did with this video is I got the original source image of this, PIA 19929, and I re-enhanced it and took larger clips in much higher resolution than I originally did. So there's a lot more to see, and there's lots of structures around this Great Pyramid here, which is about 500 feet tall. You can see quite a lot more detail in here than has been seen before. So I'm going to show you a little clip of that as well. Basically, I originally showed this about 5 or 6 years ago on my channel, and I think I showed it on Ancient Aliens as well, and one or two other shows. And this is one of my favourite images of Mars ever, because this is undoubtedly one of the best structures that we've seen on the surface. It's very large indeed, and has a big rectangular structure next to it as well. So I'm going to show you that in a bit more detail in a minute. But the main thing today is this one. I'm going to show you this first, and then we'll move on, and I'll try and link you up to some other similar things to compare to, which I'll also have in at the end of the video, so you can compare the images back to back. But I'm also going to show you that and one or two other things as well. So let's get on with it. Here we are. Now here's the clip from the raw image, which is very blurry. It's only in black and white, a bit fuzzy looking, unfortunately, as a lot of these images are. The detail isn't very good, but if you push the contrast and brightness on this, you can get some detail out of it, which I've done here. And what I did, just to make this show up a lot better on mobile devices, is I've selected round it and turned it sort of a golden brown colour to make it stand out against the background. Let's go a bit closer. Now we don't want to go too close because it will blur even more. Okay, well that'll do. Now I'm just going to point out some of the features here. Like a lot of the skulls that I spotted in this area, it seems to be a kind of reptile looking thing. The skull comes around like that. We've got a very clear jawline, square jaw, but long. There seems to be a little rock or pebble there. It comes up right like this, cheekbone, top of the head, and a strange point to it, just there. It comes around like that. That's the skull, the back of the skull. But the neck is very fat indeed, and I think comes to about there. This is really odd, and it reminded me of some things I've seen online of fictional reptilians, and illustrations that many artists have done over the years. I'll show you some more on that in a minute. But this head actually may have come originally more like this. It may have been more rounded at the top there. This may be eroded or broken away, as many of these things are. But what you've got here also, which is interesting, is nose detail and nostrils. Now these don't look like the nostrils that I've seen on some of the other reptoids and reptilians on the surface of Mars. They're more human-like. In other words, the nose looks more human, and the nostrils are in more of a human position there. Often with these skulls and remains on Mars, the reptoids and reptilians have little holes either side of their nose, like this. I've got examples of that which I can show you as well. So that was interesting. So that makes it a bit different to some of them. So this is some kind of weird hybrid. And you've got the teeth detail coming down here. There's the maxilla and obviously the lower jaw there. You've got eye detail here. You've got what remains of an eye there. Like a lot of these have, they're extremely well preserved, calcified, You got some really interesting details here. It looks quite damaged, but some of these reptilian skulls do have very pronounced ridges on their skull, like some of the mythical images we see of reptilians or reptoids or whatever. Okay, so that was interesting. The snout was interesting to me because it's quite different to some of the other ones I've seen, and you can even see in the raw image, if you go in close, you can actually see there's a nostril there and a nostril there. You can actually see those darker patches with a lighter patch in between. So you've got the nostrils there like this, and a lighter bit there in between it, dividing them. So you can see it in the raw image. You've just got to really brighten the hell out of it, really. As I always say, these images are quite poor, but there is information to be gained from them, and you can get some information out of these. I'm hoping in the next few days we'll get some more images of this particular area and maybe get some clearer, more detailed images of this particular thing. So that would be good. But don't hold your breath, because you can never tell what they're going to do next. It is very similar to some other things I've got up here that I've shown before a couple of months back, in January, a few months back. This one is also a reptoid or reptilian, a very small eye, small nose, but with small upward facing nostrils here. You can see those there. So it's quite different to that, but it is also very similar to this one, which also has a very long pointy kind of skull, elongated pointed skull. But this one has very different nasal detail, and it looks more like a reptoid rather than a reptilian. But who's to say? I mean, this may not even be an intelligent being. This may be some sort of predator creature, like a dinosaur or something. It's got very large pointed teeth here. So who knows? It may not be directly related to that. But there are lots of these. I'll show some of them at the end of the video. I won't go through all this now because I want to get on with this. Now I'm going to show you a bit more detail that I showed in my previous video, which a lot of you may not have seen yet. So if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it, because it shows this in a lot more close-up detail. And you can see some quite astonishing things on top of this pyramid, which I'm going to show you now. This is fascinating, because basically what I did, I took a much larger clip of the image and enlarged it a lot more. And you can see it's pixelated, of course, because I've cropped it from quite close. But what we've got here is a lot more detail, not only of the collapsed side of the pyramid, which is this part here, where it's all kind of collapsed down, but basically, if you look carefully, you can actually see not only the large rectangular shaped building here, which comes down like that. There's another one here. There's what looks like another structure here to the side of it, with multiple rectangular parts. This has got some interesting details in it here. You can see this. This looks like it's partly collapsed. We've also got a squarish structure here, which comes across like that. And we've got inner parts here, which may be entrances or something. But this particular Great Pyramid, I've called it, I think I initially called it the Tower of Babel. But basically, if you look carefully, you can actually see the individual huge stone blocks in a step-like pattern going up the side there. From here, like a big ramp. So we've got this part coming along here, and then it joins. And then we've got, let's go in closer. Now, some of this is pixelation, but these are actually there. These are bigger than the actual pixels. So they're actually there. And you can actually see all these kind of block details where it looks like it's been damaged here. And then we've got a load more coming down this side here. You can actually see, like these dark shadows coming down in between them, like this. and that comes right down to here. And there seems to be something sticking out there. So we've got some really interesting construction here on this massive structure. And now whether this actually was designed to have these upright parts, we've got this big upright part here, but this looks like it may have collapsed. I would imagine this would have come out to here and joined onto this bit. It looks to me as if this is actually part of the structure here, this bit below, and this is being destroyed or collapsed. And this looks like intelligent structures all around here, all this stuff here. Okay, you've got internal rectangular structures here, loads of them coming up here. So this is all intelligent structures here, but some of it's so badly damaged and eroded by the looks of it, and probably covered in sand and crap as well, that it's kind of masking a lot of it. But this structure here, I think, this thing here, was actually joined to this. I think this is all part of the same structure. Let's do that again. This probably came up much more like this, and it was joined to this like this here. Okay, you see that angle there? I think this actually came up like this. Who knows? But it seems to me that this has been heavily destroyed or damaged, but because it's made of stone, like the giant pyramids we have in Egypt and elsewhere on Earth, it's largely intact. But the fascinating thing is the actual block detail. You can see individual massive block details here on the side of it, like you would with the one at Giza in Egypt. You look at it and you can see the blocks, even one, and when they go out of sort of range, visual range, you can still see highlights and shadows of them, even though you can't see them individually as such. But there's also lots of these little structures up here. You can see loads of them. There's a building up here, up on the ridge here, just here. There's a building there. And we've got multiple structures here at the back. But this one next to it is fascinating because we've got these internal details here. You can actually see where it's collapsed down. And we've got ruined uprights. So this may have been joined to it as well. This whole thing may have been more like a ziggurat, joined like this, with a big platform here, like this. And this may have actually been joined to this here. So who knows exactly what it was and how it all was constructed initially, but it's very interesting. And incidentally, if you look at the thing in negative, if you take a screenshot of this, I will put a clip of this in at the end so you can take a full HD screenshot. This has already been enhanced, obviously, but if you do a negative of it, then you can really see some of those details around the edge. Look at these parts here. Okay? And you can see the actual blocks in a sort of step pattern going all the way up here and all the way down the side. There seems to be damage on top, but you can also see them up here, look. There's rows and rows of them, like little tower blocks or something. So I estimate this thing to be about 500 feet from here to here. It could be 450, could be 550. Don't know exactly. That's an estimation based on the measure guide that I gave in this video, the previous video that I did. There are measure guides on there, luckily from NASA, and they're fairly accurate. I wouldn't say they're completely spot on, but they're not bad. So I actually think this may have actually come right down like this and be joined to this whole thing. And this middle part is all kind of collapsed away, exposing the internal construction of this massive pyramid, or ziggurat, if you want to call it that. But look at these upright structures here. Let's go in a bit closer. Look at this. These upright rectangles. You've internal parts here. You can see all this, and they're blocks, and the blocks have fallen away, some of them, like we have here. You can see the shadow inside where it's much darker, where the blocks have fallen away. Now, that is no way an actual structure. Absolutely no way. But I'm sure people will still come on here and say this, that they can see things like this in the desert when they're in Colorado or something, or like a lot of people do. Yeah, whatever. Well, they got pyramids in Colorado and Nevada, have they? I actually had someone say this the other day, saying that they've seen very similar structures. I'm a photographer, and when I go walking in the desert, I see these things all over the place. Oh, really? What, the giant 500-foot pyramids with huge rectangular structures next to them in the middle of Nevada? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. Okay, so there was that. I mean, that was really interesting. I'll put some more clips of that in at the end for you, and you can take shots of it yourself, flip it to negative, and zoom in, and you can see all these blocks up here. You can just see loads of them up here, like a big load of steps. Absolutely insane. And that's something that didn't really come across in the original video I did about 5 or 6 years ago. So that was interesting. So now this got me wondering. Now we've got things like this, and there's lots of other similar reptoids and reptilian looking skulls that I found, but there are also lots of human ones. There's a mixture. I would say there's a pretty even balance of either at the moment. If you look through all the finds that I've found, I would say that there are about a third of them are reptilian, maybe a quarter. Most of them are humanoid looking, but much more human looking humanoids, I would say. But then you have things like this, which is the albino alien, which I showed a few months back originally. And this doesn't look either. It doesn't look human, doesn't look reptilian. This looks more like a grey type alien. And the facial features are more, I would say, albino. I mean, what can I say? And now what would cause something to look like an albino on Mars? Well, perhaps this person, or alien, whatever you want to call it, Martian, is alive and has just come up from a little underground hatch or building. I'm sure that a lot of these buttes have underground entrances into the underground parts of Mars, and maybe this one just came up to have a look at the rover and see what was going on, spy on it. Who knows? Now the question is, which of these types of Martians built this Great Pyramid? Would it have been the reptilian or reptoids that built it? Possibly. Was it this race of rather pasty-looking albino underground dwellers that built it? Possibly. They could be some of the original inhabitants. We really don't know. But I would guess whoever built that Great Pyramid was also responsible for building the Great Sphinx, the giant 200-foot Sphinx. It's actually longer than 200 feet, actually. This part, the middle part, is 200 feet, but the whole thing is actually much larger than that and is partially buried. I would imagine it's more like 250 to 300 altogether. You measure the whole thing, because it has a base to it. So, and I'm guessing that may go down a bit into the sand as well. So it's probably a bit larger than that. But this doesn't look like a reptilian head on this Sphinx. This to me looks human. You've got a very large nose, a bald head, or some kind of headgear. A very large head compared to the size of the body, much like the one in Egypt, but doesn't share any facial attributes with the one in Egypt, which has actually been recarved a number of times in its lifetime, been repaired and recarved, and is way older than we're told. It's probably something like 7,000 or 8,000 years old, possibly even 25,000 years old or older, much like the Great Pyramids are. They're probably a lot older than we're told, and the Egyptians merely moved in when these structures were already there. They'd already been there for many thousands of years when the Egyptians moved in, and they just inhabited the area and repaired some of the things like the Sphinx and the pyramids, And they didn't build a lot of the Great Pyramids at all. They built some of the smaller ones. So it wasn't even the Egyptians that built them. They're way older than that. So was this built by these reptoid or reptilians? Or the pasty albino looking alien race? Or was this built by the humans on Mars? That's the real question. And if you look at this other angle, this is a reverse angle of the Sphinx here. This is taken slightly from the front and the side. This is taken from the back side, looking across it that way. This is the arse end of it here. If I zoom in, that's the arse end of it here, and it's looking away there. And incidentally, this thing is looking up at this giant Great Pyramid here, up on the mountain. This is down below in Gale Crater, and this is up on the mountain, and is the main feature of what I've called the Forbidden City in the area. Okay, so I'll put a clip of that and a couple of other clips of that, but do go back and watch this video because it shows the whole area, and you've got these massive mounds and other ruins here. A lot of these are intelligent structures, but I really don't think that they necessarily all live in box or square houses like we do, a lot of these Martians. I think they carved right into the rock, and that's what we have here. A lot of this is concrete, but a lot of it's been carved right into, and I think they were living inside the rock and inside the mountain. And these are merely some of the remains of the capital buildings that were there initially, which were so well made that they weren't destroyed by the cataclysm because of their strong ballistic shape. But there are multiple structures up here, and in fact you can see them. The Forbidden City here, it goes right along here, and we've got this causeway going up here, and you've got multiple structures, but a lot of them are so badly eroded and damaged that they're not very clear, and we rarely get close-ups of the Forbidden City, and for good reason, is because basically NASA don't really want people to discuss it. A lot of us researchers have been looking at this for a very long time now and showed multiple angles and images of buildings up here, as I and many others have. And it's indisputable that this is actually a ruined city. There's no doubt about it. And NASA have never denied that, of course. They tried to deny the Sphinx, as I showed in my last video, by saying that it's pixelated and JPEG artifacts and stuff like that, which is utter nonsense. So there we are. So we have a giant pyramid up on the mountain with multiple structures around it, loads of stuff here. If I go in close, you can actually see down here a lot of these are upright structures and ruins down here as well. Okay, so I'll put some clips of that in at the end. And this thing does not look particularly human from this angle, but we're seeing it from the back here. If you see it from the front, it does look kind of human. Big nose, big dark eye, what looks like a bald patch or some kind of hat or something, like a skull cap, hair detail coming down the side. Very interesting. So the question is, who built these things? Was it the humans? Was it the grey types, like this one? Or was it these reptoid types? We probably will never know, unless we go there again and send another mission to Gale Crater, which I really do think we should. We probably will never know in huge detail what actually happened. The only true way to tell would be to actually land there and go inside this massive structure and go up to this giant Sphinx and perhaps go in the entrance here. It's got an entrance at the front here. There are probably records inside this thing, and there may well be in this pyramid multiple works of art inside, as well as perhaps tombs and other things, and perhaps mummified pharaohs and that kind of thing. We may find writing and art all over the internal walls here, as well as statues around it. And there may be writing and stuff to be decoded all over it. And we may find that it's very similar to some of the Egyptian hieroglyphs, or perhaps some of the Mayan or Olmec glyphs from Central America. That would be very interesting. But until we go inside some of these things, we probably won't know in great detail what actually happened and who built them. I would safely bet that there would be artwork depicting the builders of this structure inside. Perhaps even showing how they built it, and with multiple types of writing and artwork and information in the surrounding buildings as well, which may be huge tombs and perhaps government buildings. Some of these may be government buildings and religious buildings. So there we are. So I'll just quickly show you a couple of things before I go. The point is, we need to find out who built these and which ones did. And in finding that out, we'll probably find out the history of Mars, at least the recent history of Mars, going back perhaps millions of years. Not the very ancient history of Mars. But who knows, we may find records of all this stuff in here. But we need to get some drones in there. We need to fly inside. We need to look inside and go inside some of these structures and photograph inside and see if we can decipher the glyphs and artwork which were bound to be there. I found lots of glyphs and artwork on the ground here, fragments of it. I'm willing to bet that the best stuff will be up here, in that pyramid, and surrounding structures. And if you don't think there are reptilians on Mars, well, here's another one. There are plenty of them. I've got loads on my channel. And in fact, I've got loads here. And quick, before I go, there's also this image that David Bagley put up on Mars Magazine for me. I put this up last night and asked people if they could find a similar looking image of a reptilian stroke alien. And David's come up with one very similar here. I may even put a clip of that on the cover as well to compare it. It's fairly similar. It's not the same, but the actual cheekbones are very similar to this. It's not a high quality image, but basically look at the shape of the cheekbones here, how it comes round. Look at the mouth detail, and the nose particularly on this I thought was very similar, and the very substantially wide neck. Look at this. How interesting is that? Because the neck and the nose and mouth detail and the cheekbone detail are actually pretty similar to what we've got here today. Here, we got that shape to the cheekbone coming round like that, quite severe looking. And the nose is very similar. So I'll put some clips of that in at the end. And there's also a load of other things I'm going to put in as well, just to compare. A lot of these seem to have these ridges on their head. These are illustrations, obviously. This one here has got these ridges. And very similar details to what we're looking at. So there seem to have been quite a few of these in the different types of these in the area. Now some of these may have actually been dinosauroids or reptoids that were probably just vicious predators going around eating things. But some of these may have been very intelligent, upright walking humanoid types, like this one, perhaps. But some of them are very small. This one is really small, only about 4 inches. This one's a bit bigger. It's about 5 or 6, 7. This is approximately the same size as the one we're looking at today, this one here. So they're not huge, but there may have been some very large ones, and some of them look mutated, which does dictate to me that possibly, I mean, this is very mutated, this one, and twisted. You can see this mouth part is all kind of twisted and deformed. A lot of them may have had radiation poisoning, and mutations may have occurred in some of these, which could explain some of the odd features on some of these creatures. This one, I keep coming back to this one because it looks so similar to that. It's just insane. I'll put a link to a lot of these things at the end anyway. There are so many of these things I could go on forever showing. This one here looks quite reptilian, the bottom left corner. This one is human. This one is a statue of the monkey god Hanuman. Hanuman, the Hindu god, here. This one Looks like Kevin Keegan after a night out on the town. Oh dear, with the curly hair. Yeah, right, okay. But some of the, this shows the different types of people we got here already. There's at least 4 or 5 different races of people living on, or there were. We got these grey alien-looking ones, humans, possible human. We got a statue of a monkey god, like Hanuman, very similar to Hanuman, with even the pointed helmet. And we've got a reptilian-looking one here. So that kind of sums up what we're looking at, really. Different types, different sizes, different races, different types of creature of all sorts. So the question is, who built all this stuff? Perhaps they lived together, or perhaps they got on with each other. But I'm guessing they didn't. Judging by the state of the surface of Mars, I'm guessing they didn't get on very well. Thanks for watching. Clips coming up now.